Hello and thanks for checking in with Crossroads here on Big Centre TV. Now, as you probably know, we've been rerunning as many episodes of Crossroads as we can get our hands on, going almost all the way back to the beginning. Now, over the summer, we're rewinding the old tapes to give you a chance to catch up with what's been happening down in King's Oak. And that's because we know not everyone has been with us right from the beginning. And also, of course, we have new viewers who've joined us on Virgin Media. So now we're all together, let's take a fun look back at the classic soap opera made by the wonderful ATV right here in the Midlands. Now, you might have noticed that episodes don't always follow on from each other, particularly in the early days of black and white. Well, that's because a lot of the earlier recordings have been lost. Now, the same situation affects many old TV programmes, and perhaps the most famous of these is Doctor Who. You might remember the big news a couple of years ago when a number of previously missing episodes were found. Well, it's the same situation here, but what we're going to try and do is to fill in some of the gaps for you, if we know ourselves, or perhaps you might be able to shed some light over what happened if you've got a good memory. If you can help, or if you want to let us know how much you're enjoying Crossroads again, why not give us a shout? You know where we are on Facebook and Twitter. Just do a search for Big Centre TV. And if you want to email us direct, then it's crossroads@bigcentre.tv. Now, I'll be here every week at the same time for a look back over what we've seen during last week's episodes, and then we'll take a look ahead to what's coming up next week. Also, some special guests are going to be checking in with us, and we might just raid the archives to see what else we can find connected to Crossroads. Now, talking about special guests, who better than Jane Rossington, who played Jill Richardson, Harvey, Chance, Maddingham, throughout the original series. She'll be joining me in the lounge a little later on to tell us a bit about those early years. But first, a little bit of history, I think, just to give you an idea of where Crossroads actually came from. Now, it was all based on a sibling rivalry between Meg Richardson and her sister Kitty Jarvis. Now, Meg was a widow with a large house in the country on the southern outskirts of Birmingham, and Kitty ran a small store in the back streets of Birmingham with her husband Dick. And since her husband's death, Meg had been struggling with the upkeep of the house. And just before the series began, one of ATV's reporters caught up with them.
Well, here I am back in the Midlands looking for some of the people you'll be seeing a lot of in the very near future. And here they are, Kitty Jarvis and Meg Richardson. How do you do, Kitty?
How do you do?
How do you do, Meg?
Hello.
Meg, I believe you run a motel. That must keep you pretty busy.
Oh, my goodness, it does, especially when business is like it is the next few weeks. We're booked absolutely solid.
And you still find time to do your shopping in the town?
Well, I've got to, you see, because I've only got a teenage daughter helping me. My schoolboy son isn't a lot of use. And we're expecting a Spanish cook. But I've got a special do coming up, a wedding, and I'm looking for champagne and lobsters for it. So if you'll excuse me, I think I'd better get on.
Certainly, I won't keep you.
See you later, Kitty.
Goodbye,
Bye-bye.
Meg. Kitty, I believe you run a sweet shop. That must keep you pretty busy, too.
Yes, I'm afraid it does. And newspapers as well, rounds and things.
And who's looking after the shop at the moment?
My husband, and he hates doing it, and he's very impatient, and I promised to get back as soon
I
as
have met
can.
your husband, yes. Well, I won't keep you either, Kitty. Thank you very much indeed.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Now, Meg was, of course, Noel Gordon, and Kitty was played by Beryl Johnston. Now, as you heard Meg mention, she had a teenage daughter, Jill, and a schoolboy son, Sandy. And here's Jill in the reception of the Crossroads Motel.
Sarah, I can't possibly tackle her on my own. Look, come round tomorrow night, and we'll have a go at her then. OK, oh, she's coming. I have to go. Bye. Silhouette. If only I can go.
Jill there is played by Jane Rossington, and don't forget we'll be catching up with Jane right here a little later on. Now, Jill's cheeky 14-year-old brother was played by Roger Tongue.
Oh no, not again.
All right. It was on the edge of the top shelf in the fridge and I caught it with my cuff.
Well, what were you doing in the fridge anyhow?
I was hungry.
Don't tell me you've been at the cheese again. You've got calcium deficiency, all that cheese. It's not natural.
I told you I was hungry.
So that's most of the family. Let's talk to Meg again about how she's found life so far at the Crossroads Motel.
Mrs. Richardson, how long have you been running the Crossroads Motel?
Oh, well, it's going on for about 2 years now.
Why did you start it in the first place?
Well, you see, my husband died. They ran this motorway right through our property. And, well, he had a lot of trouble and it proved too much for him. So I was left with the children. So we used the compensation money that we got from the council to build a motel.
And has it been very successful?
Oh, well, it is, yes. We're building up very well. Of course, motels sort of strange in this country. You know, they're not really very used to them, but it's catching on fine.
You must have had a lot of difficulties when you started, didn't you?
We still have difficulties. Mainly staff. That's the main problem. Only we could get staff.
What's the problem there? Do people not want to come and work as hard as you want them to work, or what is it?
Well, you know, in the catering business, the hours are very long. And I think in the industrial Midlands, you know, manpower's at a premium. And so we're fighting a lot of very high-paid jobs. And, you know, the catering business isn't all the fun it appears to be on the surface.
Are you getting cooks and things like that sufficiently easily?
Well, we're keeping our fingers crossed. We have a lady arriving from Seville tonight, actually, a Senora Carlos Rafael. And, you know, we're hoping she's going to be a great success.
What about the licensing laws? Have you had any difficulty with those?
Oh, yes, we're still having difficulty. You see, we only have a license to sell wine, not spirits. So that means we can serve sherry before a meal or table wines with a meal and port afterwards. But, of course, most people want to drop with the hard stuff, and they just don't understand this at all.
How do you think you're going to get round this?
Well, I don't know. I'm making an application for a license on the 19th of November. But my solicitor tells me this is a very tricky thing in an area like this, because really you're supposed to get a license from a place that's gone out of business. You know, a pub or a club has closed down. Then you can take their license over, but this is very hard to get.
But you mean you're going to have to push somebody out of business before you can get the license?
Well, almost that. That's what it amounts to. It's very difficult.
Where do you get your clients from, primarily?
Oh, well, mostly in the summer, of course, from tourists, you know, who are going through to, you know, Stratford and up to the Lake District and up to Scotland and places like that. But in the winter, of course, we mainly rely on you know, commercial travellers and people who have their business going up and down the Midlands, and quite a lot of theatre people, of course, too.
And one final question. When you go on your holidays, do you stay in a motel?
I don't get any holiday.
Thank you very much indeed.
You wouldn't like a job yourself, would you? Can you cook?
Yes, actually.
Come round and sign in.
Thank you very much.
OK, so that was how it was all set to begin on the 2nd of November 1964. But, as I mentioned before, a lot of the earliest episodes are now very sadly missing. And that's why when we started our run of Crossroads here on Big Centre TV, we began with episode 126, which was made in April 1965.
Hey, William, I should not forbid.
You and your motorbike is like you, useless. Oh,
Please. You do not to be angry, please.
Cállate, Carlos. You should not be here in the school. It's for the girls, not for the men.
Oh, you know, this English education is beyond the believing. You know, they call this a public school, and not one member of the public is allowed to come here. There is this school is for the ladies to be finished off.
Finishing school. Listen to me. You wait here quietly while I go change. And don't let nobody see you.
Next up, we had a run of programmes from episodes 496 to 500, which were made in November 1966, and they featured Marilyn Gates, the singing waitress, played by Sue Nichols, better known these days as Audrey Roberts in Coronation Street. And the motel was preparing for a wedding, whilst Marilyn was trying to avoid another, her own.
Oh, it's you. I thought Barry said there was a gentleman to see you.
Oh, Marilyn.
How did you manage to get here? I thought Eddie would have had you rotting in the glass house by now.
Oh, take no notice of him, love. He's all talk.
Well, talk or not, he's a corporal.
That's what I mean. All corporals are like that.
Well, I reckon he could get pretty nasty if he wanted to.
Well, let him. If I'm going to get done, I may as well get done properly. Anyway, I don't mind, as long as it means being with you a bit longer.
Really?
I could face a court-martial for you, love.
If I'd had the courage to kill myself last night, it would have solved everything, wouldn't it?
Sir.
All is not lost. You know, they're changing the divorce laws for people like us. They're going to have a lovely high-sounding phrase till consent do us part.
Kitty, I've just had a thought. It's under my name. Bailey, I mean. I'll have to have that changed.
There won't be time. If we'd known earlier, we could have done something about it, but
What would people say? If yours is under Fraser and mine's under Bailey?
Can't go abroad as Mr. Fraser and Mrs. Bailey.
Kitty, this is no time to argue about ethics. Look.
Am I sort of looking down on the whole scene, like the Angel of Mons? Or what?
No, you're not an angel. You're more of a sort of goddess, a sort of Venus, really, with your sylph-like figure silhouetted against the flames of industry.
Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Senora. I was just telling Carlos to leave the cake alone.
I heard you halfway across
please,
the
keep
reception.
him back, Senora, you promised.
Oh, Beltop
Please.
Carlos, honestly, you'd think nobody'd ever seen a wedding cake before.
OK, so that's what's been going on so far over the past week at the Crossroads Motel. We're just going to take a short break now. When we come back, we'll have a chat with the one person who probably knows more about Crossroads than anyone else, because she was there from start to finish. It's Jane Rossington. So we'll see you after the break. Welcome back and thanks for checking in with Crossroads right here on Big Centre TV. Now, I said earlier on that we had a special guest on the show, so to take us right back to the early days of Crossroads, let's pop through to the lounge with Jane Rossington. Well, Jane, thank you for checking in with Crossroads once again.
I can't escape.
You will never escape.
Hello.
I want to talk first of all about the early episodes. Those are the ones that we've been seeing on Big Centre TV, because they were all recorded at studios in Aston, weren't they?
Yeah. It was an old cinema that they managed to acquire. I don't know whether they built it or it had been built, but at the front it looked very smart. Then, the reality, you go into the studios, and the studios was an old cinema, and the roof had given out some time before. And so if it was raining, we'd have to have buckets all over the place. And there'd be this kind of plink, plonk noise, which they used to pick up a bit. It wasn't that loud, but it was loud enough to be funny, you know, and we'd all be going...
I was going to say, did it put you off at all?
No, you did. But it was quite funny. Yeah. And you had to be careful if when you made an exit or something, that someone hadn't moved the bucket to just there and you were going to crash into it. But I thought, well, really, after the glamour of coming into this lovely sort of entrance, and then you go into the actual studio part that we were working in, rather different. And then, of course, we had this basic problem with the set. And we had some rather nice revolving doors, which Nolly and her mother, when the first people who came through them was those two. And of course the snag was, it promptly, as it moved around, it kept picking up all the cameras. And so that was, we had to stop. So it was, to get the first shot taken took forever, because they had to think of something else, you know. But things like that, there was lots of those sort of things that used to go wrong at the beginning, yeah.
Because in those days, you were doing it almost every day. You were doing sort of 5 episodes a week.
Yeah, there was only 8 of us. So we used to start, it sounds funny really, but we used to start rehearsing. We had, the first day we used to just get the scripts out and hand them around, and everyone read them. And then we'd mark them up. That was Friday. The second day was a Saturday. And we decided, we all got together and said, can we miss the lunch hour? And so we go straight through the lunch hour. So we used to start at 10 o'clock, and we officially went straight through to 5. But as long as we all knew the lines, and we could do it, we could get off a bit early. Used to get off sometimes about 1:30. Occasionally, things went terribly awry, and you were still there at 5 o'clock, but never mind. But it was quite scary, because there was only 8 of us. And we used to learn our lines all over the place. And it was very, very hard work. The script, if you looked at it, it was covered in words. Now, if you look at a modern script, there's hardly any lines. There's not, there might be just a note saying, she waves to somebody. Mm. Actual lines are difficult because people want the cue, and the cue's got to be right. So if you say, well, in that case, I'm going home, and they take home as the cue. Now, so you've got to say that. Yeah. You can't say, well, in that case, I'm going. Because they'll be going, does she mean home, or is that it? You know?
And Jane will be with us again next time with more of her memories of the early days. Now it's time to look ahead at what we can expect during the coming week's episodes of Crossroads here on Big Centre TV. On Monday, we're travelling back to episode 986, which was made in November 1968. And in this episode, Diane is going to be appalled at Marcus's business ethics. Miss Tatum will receive some hospital visitors and get inundated with work. And ex-con George is going to visit Vince in search of work and accommodation. Oh, and Nathaniel is going to recite a ghost story for Meg and Malcolm in the cottage.
It's all so quiet, isn't it?
That's half the appeal of the place.
Almost too quiet.
Oh, steady, Meg. You'll be convincing yourself the place is haunted in a minute.
Well, you know, that old boy Nathaniel Kitty and I met down here the first day, he swore it was. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if it is.
The estate agent didn't say anything about a ghost being included in the fixtures and fittings.
Well, would you if you wanted to sell a country cottage? It's a bit cold, isn't it?
I knew it. You're giving yourself goose pimples with all these tales of the supernatural.
Then come and warm me up.
Better?
Much. I don't care now. Look!
Who's that at the window then? Ha-ha. Next up on Tuesday, it's episode 1009 from January 1969. With Vince Parker in hospital after an accident, Meg receives notification of criminal proceedings against her for dangerous driving.
I'd rather know the truth.
Vince, we really don't know. We can't tell until the bandages come off.
I mean, there's a chance that I won't be able to see at all.
This is very difficult for me. You must realise it.
I'll still be able to see out of my left eye, won't I?
You should be able to, but there is a possibility. It's very remote. That the left eye might fail because of the damage done to the other. They call it sympathetic loss of vision.
Oh, let's face it, it was pretty obvious from what you were saying to the inspector.
We thought you were asleep.
Why wasn't I just killed outright? Anything would be better than going blind.
Serious stuff there. Now on Wednesday, it's episode 1182 from November 1969, and Commander Boone is searching for his daughter and her boyfriend. Meanwhile, back at the motel, during the rebuilding of reception after a wartime bomb destroyed the original, Archie gets into trouble when his workmen don't clear up the mess they make. Meanwhile, something's up with Meg.
Come in. Ah, Mrs. Gray, you shouldn't have bothered. I'm coming down.
You know what Dr. Maynard said?
Doctors are always overcautious. They've got to be. I've had a wonderful night.
I'm glad.
Just put it down there. Thank you.
Do you have to go to the motel today?
If you mean am I indispensable, the answer is no. What is it?
Oh dear, hope she's all right. Now on Thursday, we're going into colour for the first time with episode 1192 from November 1969. Archie comes to an arrangement with Diane. Meg is confined to bed after being taken ill at Tessa's wedding. But is her illness all it seems to be? Oh, it's getting a bit busy down in the kitchen.
Cakes, a plate of fancies and a pot of tea for two, please.
Sandwiches, butter scones, pot of tea for three,
Oh,
China.
hang on just a minute. I was first.
All right, don't blow your cool, girl. The customers won't run away.
I think she went home.
He didn't say anything.
Well, I don't blame her, all these people turning up and wanting tea in the middle of a wedding reception.
Shall I go and find Mrs. Lofton?
No, don't worry, you'll be an angel and take those two for me, will you?
And your smiling face makes the customers think of hot crumpets around the nursery.
Come on, here. The natives are getting restless out there. They're dying of thirst.
We know.
Well, it's critical, Amy. I mean, they've had to water out the dog's bowl 3 times.
Right, there you are, Amy. That's yours.
That's
Chart.
it. Yeah, and there's another lot
What?
turned up there that want some tea and all, so you better
blimey.
see to them. Excuse me, Mrs. Turtle, but I think you've got the potato bug in your petunias.
On Friday, we have episode 1304 from May 1970. Amy, Diane and Mr. Lovejoy are considering the prospect of winning the pools. Don't we all? Whilst George Baxter returned unexpectedly with consequences for Claire Thomas. Whatever can they be?
What the hell are you doing here?
Look, you phoned me. You told me you were interested in going back into business with me. You changed your little mind and let me down. I ask you, was that a nice thing to do, my darling? Of course, old Georgie's come to see you.
Well, something's cropped up. I'm not interested anymore.
Now, don't be rash, love. Let's take things nice and slowly. Maybe you're not interested anymore, but I am.
Oh dear. And finally on Saturday we're going to jump ahead to episode 1366 from September 1970. Now in this episode Meg is away, so Mr Lovejoy is left running the motel. All is not well with the staff however, and a dispute between Mr Booth, Amy and Vi turns rather nasty. A stranger's going to turn up in the kitchen claiming to have planted a bomb there, and Nick makes Mr Lovejoy a proposition. Let's see what's happening at reception.
What's the matter with you tonight? As nervous as a cat.
I keep thinking I hear the phone ringing.
You do. It's been ringing on and off all night.
Kath, I need a drink.
Yeah, you do that. It'll maybe settle your stomach.
Why, what's wrong with my stomach?
The way you're going on, you're working up to a Judine ulcer.
Yeah, I thought the Irish were supposed to be romantic.
Romantic? Whatever gave you that idea?
Here, Kath, haven't you ever been in love?
Yeah, dozens of times. It ruins the nerves, something terrible.
Yes, you can say that again.
The Crossroads Motel.
So there you go, it's all happening at the Crossroads right here on Big Centre TV every night at 9. Well, we've run out of time on Crossroads check-in, but I'll be back at the same time next week, so don't forget, if there's something about Crossroads you'd like to tell us about, maybe you can fill in some of the gaps in the storylines. Maybe you've got fond memories of some of the episodes we showed. Just get in touch. Look us up on social media at Big Centre TV, or you can email crossroads@bigcentre.tv. Thanks for checking in with Crossroads. Time to check out though, so I'll see you next week. Crossroads Motel, can I help you?